During the COVID-19 pandemic, as a musician, I've been very lucky to continue with some work. In the first lockdown, sure, there was nothing at all. Everything was just literally stopped. In the second lockdown, pubs couldn't have live music. There were massive restrictions still in place. And of course, weddings, you had 30 people at a wedding ceremony. If you had a 4-piece band, that means you could only have 26 guests, etc., etc., etc. But the Salisbury Hospital, Wimborne Hospital and Sherborne Hospital, which are all hospitals in Dorset and Wiltshire, 2 counties in the south of England, continue to give me work. Now, I work for a charity called Stars Appeal, which is the Salisbury Hospital charity that looks after the music in all of those 3 places. And they said, you can come back and do gigs, but they have to be outside. So the massive great yards with the hospital buildings. So you're far away from any patients at all. Other musicians would say to me, well, surely that's the last place you should be going during a pandemic. And I thought, well, we've been offered the gigs and there are rigorous testing procedures in place, constant testing, sanitizing, wearing a mask, and then we have to wear 2 masks, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. You just go through all these protocols, but it's been really nice to have these gigs. More recently, we've been back on the wards to an extent, still with rigorous testing in place, and usually playing in the corridors, for example, instead of to patients themselves, really close up. And actually, it's been really nice. One of the reasons that I continue to do it, and I will always probably continue to do these, is the well-being of the patients is of paramount importance. That's why we're there. You're not just going, and very, very, very often patients will come out and listen, and they'll talk to you about their, music, experiences over the years. Sometimes, and actually pre-pandemic, there was a lady in there who had a recorder. She played sort of Baroque recorder, and she would come in and play with us. And it was just such a nice sort of vibe. But when you wake up an elderly patient who's got dementia with a tune that they then sing along to, which has happened to me twice now, it just gets you by the throat. You say, "Whoa, okay, now I know what I'm doing here." And the nurses are sort of nudging each other. Look, she's working. They're pointing to a patient who is kind of back in the room and singing along, who hasn't been responsive for, perhaps days or even weeks. I played in front of a guy who had a massive stroke at one of the other hospitals. One side of his face was really limp. He had a proper stroke, probably quite lucky to get through and survive it. And the nurse was talking to him, just constantly talking to him, and came up to me and she said, "He really likes Neil Diamond." Oh, okay. So I played Sweet Caroline, and his response to hearing that tune, he couldn't speak and couldn't really move all that well. He just sat in his chair, but he sort of responded. 3 weeks later, I went back to the same hospital and he was still there, but this time he was visibly much improved. He was recovering. And I played Sweet Caroline again, and he sang the chorus. And I just drove home just going, just his experience of that tune, because he clearly loves that tune, but the fact that he sang it just made me sort of go, "Oh, crikey," I'm mopping myself up a bit. The third time I saw him, about 4 weeks later, he was ready to be discharged. He'd made a full recovery, well, as full as you can. And he came up to me and said, "Thank you." And from that moment on, I thought, I'm going to continue to do these gigs, because it makes such a massive difference to people. Music is so powerful. And I've been a professional musician for 25 years. And in all of that time, you just thought, oh yeah, you're just trying to make your own way, and you're just trying to get some gigs and get weddings and just make records and do all of those other things. But it's when you experience something like that it really tells you what it's like to be a musician and how it benefits other people. Now, education, of course, music education is vital. Absolutely vital. I teach in a school where there are some kids there who have done a diploma in their instrument, and you know full well that they're going to become a doctor, an architect, or a solicitor, or whatever. But music is one of the only things only studies where things have to happen at exact moments in order to make it make sense. I suppose you could say the same thing about drama or sort of live or other live arts. But music is really, really powerful, and it's really unique in that respect, as well as, of course, being connected to every other school subject you do. Geography, physics, chemistry, everything is related to each other, but very, very much related to music. Now, cut a long story short, and I'm sorry I haven't made any videos recently about gear demos or any other things. I've been really, really busy. It's May 2022, and this week I've got a big recording session, mostly violin and guitar. Next week I'm walking from Dorset, where I live, up to London. And I'm going via all the byways and ancient tracks and paths and that sort of thing. So it's 132 miles, and I'm doing it in aid of the charity who have given me all of these gigs during the pandemic. And it's a charity called Stars Appeal Live, and it's part of Stars Appeal, which is Salisbury Hospital's charity. And I just figured it's payback time now. They've given me all this work, and there's a massive roster of musicians, poets, artists, also dancers, all sorts of people who are at the hospital to give those patients who sometimes don't get many visitors at all or long-term sick. It just gives them a chance to experience something and to, well, seeing this old lady wake up and seeing this bloke with a stroke just suddenly come to life, it made me realise why we were there and that we need to continue to be there. Now, below you can see the address of my page, my Just Giving page, and if you feel like giving towards this fantastic charity, that would be really much appreciated. And I'll be back in mid-May. I've got some other things coming up, some other demos, some other bits and pieces, plugins and other music studies. So if you feel like giving, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much.